everybody. Welcome back to Everyone is Addicted. Today's guest, Charlie, has come on graciously to share his knowledge and experience with addiction. So, hi, Charlie. I'm going to let you take it away. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Hey, how's it going, guys? So yeah, I've suffered with addiction and I'm overcoming things and have overcome things. But it's a walk that I've had to experience, a practical walk, like something that was made tangible, but like first I had to come to like an awareness and a realization of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've suffered with that. It was basically coming from complex trauma or childhood trauma. Um, all these different things about how my parents were, why they were the way they were, and then that made me realize it was more about myself, and if there's not a button there, it can't be pushed. So, if we have all these little buttons going on and getting pushed and everything, why are they there? What happens? You know, don't push the button, but now I want to push it. So, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
now I'm in this like mix of having to do all this stuff and I know that I can only go forward. I can't go back. And that's kind of what we face, I guess, as a realization of like, I have a problem. Now, what do I do? Like how do I handle this thing? And man, it was a lot of facing my brokenness, bawling my eyes out. I mean, like even on my channel, you'll see it's like I'm sitting there crying because I feel so much
But that's
like God it.
important.
Yes,
Like when we
yes.
were pre-talking, like it's important to like not make it only women are allowed to cry, Like
Mhm,
that's not true. We are all human and we all have emotions. So I
yes.
love that you are brave, not necessarily brave enough, but like open enough to do that. Maybe it'll
Mhm.
show some other people that it's okay to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because, my dad and his generation, he's 30 years older than me. Like exactly 30 years, like a 30 years, 29 years and like
My dad was
51
exactly 30
weeks.
years older than me, and it was you don't cry. I think I've seen him
hmm
cry twice my whole life. But that's when his sister has died and his dad died. That's it. It was for
Yeah.
5 minutes.
And that taught me two things, like that taught me two things. It was that first, he thinks emotions are weak. I mean, it wasn't like all at once I had to learn this. I learned that basically when I boiled it down, the two fundamental things that I learned was he thought emotions were weak. And he also thought that he couldn't do that. And that's what I learned. That's when I learned that people will place their own limiting beliefs and their limiting ideas on you when they're speaking. And that's whenever I was like, okay, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. There we go. Now I'm like, all right, now I'm like finding these areas of where I can find not just relatability, but like things are starting to stick together. And that's how our brain works.
hmm
Neuroplasticity. We have to rewire connections in our brain. And we all believe lies, basically, when you boil it down,
Because
you
our
know?
parents, what they taught us when we were younger, isn't necessarily how life really is, right? And
hmm
got to relearn how to deal with things because I wasn't taught how to any coping mechanisms. I was just
hmm
kind of told it was either my fault or suck it up, kind of never really ever was allowed to be upset about anything. So
hmm
it's definitely like you said, you have to rewire your brain so that you can actually learn how to cope, learn how to, you know, be the best version of yourself without using improper coping mechanisms such as like addiction,
hmm
and that can be in any form, like even
Yeah.
with video games, you can play them all
hmm
day long, because you just don't know how to cope with the outside world and the things you've been through, like trauma from
Yeah.
childhood.
Yep. Yep. And it was and that was one thing. So I've done so much studies because of my pain, right? Because of the addiction and trying to fight my way to something better. Because yes, we have grace. Yes, we are forgiven. Yes, we have all these things, but what do we do with that? What do we do once we come to that point of recognition of like God says I'm this thing, right? Like if he says I'm made in his image, if he says I'm forgiven, if he says all these things, like for me, this is my faith, right? I'm not trying to, preach to anybody here. I don't know if other people believe or not that listen, but
Oh,
I
most
talk
of
with
them do.
atheists.
Most of them are
Okay, cool.
very same thing. Came and found like not I not say redemption, but found
Mhm.
healing and sobriety and a better life within faith.
Heck
Actually, a
yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the only reason why I say it that way is because I try to be appealing to people that even might be totally turned off because, of religious trauma, so to speak, other
Hmm.
people in the church hurting people and whatnot. Because I like talking to atheists because we're all human. We're all spiritual, made physical. We're spiritual beings made physical. Because if we're made in the image of God, that's spirit and love. And we have that in us. And we can access that, right? With the Holy Spirit, basically. And for me, it was that, you know, and that's why I love your podcast so much, is because everyone is addicted. Just like you said, I mean, it literally is that because it's the emotional wiring of the brain. It's the chemical reaction that happens. Like I'm gonna go, buy all these things because I need to fill a hole in me. Like you're not whole, so therefore you're trying to fill a hole with something. And now you're trying to basically put yourself back together because you're broken and you're saying you're okay, but you're not. You know what I mean? So it's like we all have to realize that we can know everything, we can do everything, but who are we? Who does God say we are? Right? Who does our Father say we are? Because we don't know what a perfect parent is.
No.
We've never seen that. You know what I mean? So we have to have faith in God being the perfect parent and being who he says he is. And that's hard, especially when you go through everything we've gone through, not knowing how to trust someone, having broken promises be delivered and never followed through on. Like, and it boils down to relationship. Sorry.
Oh,
It boils
that's
down to
fine.
yeah, it boils down to relationship and presence. And now do I need something, or am I a part of something, or am I something? Right? So who like when I say I am, you know what I mean? You're validating it. Like you're
Mhm.
making it, right? So whenever God says, you know, let there be light, there's power of life into the tongue. It's real. That is truthful and accurate because even subconsciously, when you say I can't, you're reaffirming something in your brain that you already believe about yourself.
Hmm. And it's because somebody said something to you. It's like the labeling theory. If you get told over and over again that you're something, you're gonna
Yep.
believe that, right? And especially if
Hmm.
like children, and that like I was bullied, so I had a really negative self view of myself, right? And until
Hmm.
I got older and like said, I started doing the same thing as you, like looking more into things like that. I don't care what other people think about me because I love myself, so I don't really
Hmm.
care if you don't like me, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then even like to kind of not flip that on its head, but um use it as a countermeasure to stay on the narrow
Mm,
path, if that might be a better way to explain it. Um so and I'm not saying you're wrong, but like whenever I was so when we're basically boiling down character traits.
mm-hmm.
So pride, ego, and all these different things. And even in the Bible it says, in the end times there will be lovers of self and all this other kind of stuff, and people who like are, greed and just, after lust and all these bad things, right? So how do we,
Envy.
huh?
I said envy's a big one.
Yes, yes. And it's like, so how do I not want what they want? How do I keep myself from being prideful and only thinking of myself and not worrying about what they think, but also at the same time, like humble, humility? How do I have that? So we need to rely on the Holy Spirit. Obviously, it's some of the fruits of the Spirit. Long suffering. Gentleness, kindness. Um, you know, keeps going. I forget. It's the main ones I remember. But how do we realize this? And that one thing for me is that God be true and every man a liar. So His Spirit is on earth. I'm not the only person that has access to the Holy Spirit. And if God made us a certain way, that means our subconscious is wired a certain way, and he knows that. If he knows everything, he knows all of it. So it almost sounds like cliche, but he knows everything. He knows what's going to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm put in a certain situation, in a certain position to deal with something, to live a certain way, to be an example, and also like he put me there to be an overcomer, to have dominion and to multiply.
That's why
He
they
put
say
me
give
there.
it to God sometimes, because in the hard times where you feel overwhelmed, they say give it to God because God, like you said,
Mhm.
already knows what's going to happen. So
Yeah,
trust in your faith and you will be okay.
yeah. And see, man, I've struggled with this, right? So even when I was talking about the whole deconstruction thing, like reconstructing, my family was like, "Oh, you don't have faith. You need to be careful about the mixture you're in partaking on, and like what you're consuming and all these other kind of things." And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, like they would be say, and I get certain music is bad, right? Like you can have different musics, but the music I was listening to was kind of like it was like psychological music in a sense. It was like emotional. Like I'm pouring out like,
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
it's getting me in my feelings, right? Like
yeah.
it's not like, screamo, emo, like, bad stuff, like worshiping Satan or
Yeah, but
something.
it's like
But
emotional. I get what you're saying because
yeah,
my dad passed away. So sometimes I'll listen to that music because I'm trying to get a cry out because I'm missing him. So I
yeah,
get exactly what you mean.
yes. And even if you look at the Psalms, the Lamentation Psalms, I think it was King David. He was talking about bashing his enemies' babies, like on rocks, right? So, and you have to think about it this way, like if I can't go to my father to be raw, open, and for him to see me, because he already knows my thoughts. He already knows how I feel. He knows my heart more than I do. He knows everything in me, and I don't like. Why am I trying to hide? I'm just like Adam. I'm afraid, and I'm hiding myself, and I'm putting on clothes whenever my father knows what I'm like naked.
That was the
You know
kind
what I
of
mean?
point. I think that's the point of Adam is to teach us that right there, right?
Yeah, yeah, and so, I mean, these songs had cuss words in it too, though, right? Like it's the fact that my father already knows who I am. Yes, we need to follow the rules, but he also cares more about the relationship with me because it's about loving him and loving ourselves and loving others like we love ourselves, but not loving ourselves so much that we destroy other people.
Mm-hmm.
And because I see sin, yes, it's the commandments, but Jesus came to fulfill the commandments, and now we have the Holy Spirit. So sin is stealing, killing, and destroying. It's deceiving. Lying is a part of the Ten Commandments. That's
Oh
that's
yeah.
deceiving. So we have to realize that we can't be super legalistic, but we also have to make sure that we have a real relationship with our Father in heaven. Hallowed be his name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be
Will
done
be
on earth as
done.
it is in heaven. So that's what I'm saying. We have to realize there is more there, but we have to be able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And if we can achieve this, which we can, we're made in God's image. You know what I mean? We can be Christ-like. Even Christ said, "You will." And this is what blew my mind. You will do greater things than me. I'm like, who's he talking to? What? What do you mean we can do greater things than you? You're Jesus. Like,
Yeah, I know, right?
and yeah. And then he also said, you have to be like these little kids to enter the kingdom of heaven. What?
I think
Like,
that means as long as you actually feel bad for whatever sins that you have committed, because
mhm,
children are innocent, if you
yes, yes,
actually feel bad, regret, and I don't mean murder somebody, but like, I can be envious at times, so I use envy.
yeah, yeah,
So, I always apologize and ask for forgiveness. And if I didn't feel bad about it, then that's what I think that means, because children are innocent. And
mhm,
if you feel bad about the things that you've done, you've learned and you're kind of in that space too. But that's just
yeah.
how I see it, right?
Yeah, and I like that. It's similar and on the same track. I feel like, because also to me it was innocence. It's vulnerable. It's needing something to be safe and secure, and we need a parent, father, mother, and hold on, give me one second. I hate that I'm having to do this right. My computer is like about to die on me, and I need my charger. So
No
if you can give me like
worries.
5 seconds, I don't know if you can like edit it maybe, but one
Yeah,
second.
I'll
Sorry.
edit it later. Fine.
Okay, one second. You sure? Okay. Okay, I was wrong. Sorry. Oh, I had it the whole time.
That happens to me all the time.
I apologize. I
No
apologize.
worries.
I had it in there because, um, long story short, my son were having to watch the thing, and I had to hook the projector up to the laptop, and yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so children are innocent, vulnerable. They need protection. They need like their parents. They think everything's about them. So, but in a negative way, like they're hard on themselves. Um, so like if my parent does something, I think it's my fault,
Hmm.
or I want to earn their approval. And so we learn this from that. But um, when he's saying that to be like them to enter the kingdom of heaven, it's we look up to our parents. We have reverence, so to speak. We have the fear of the needing of safety, security to know that he's the one that gives it to us, and we can't get it from anywhere else. I mean, because I had to go through that specifically when it came to how do we deal with the fact that my caretaker, my care provider, I have no one else. I mean, like they're the only person that I get what I need from. So we do look up to them in that way of like now we believe what they tell us.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what I see it too is we have to hold true to those foundational beliefs with God. Because He's our Father. Because
My mother and I, well, we have, I don't know, my grandfather was the pastor at our church. So my mom seems to think that she knows everything about the Bible. So
Mhm,
at times we'll get in arguments with our views on things. So
mhm,
like my father's passed and I'm an only child. So like if you're like thinking like looking up to a parent, like it's hard for me to look up to my mom because we have different views. So that's why I always am praying to God and not really asking my mother for advice.
mhm. Yes, yes, and I totally get that because like my dad, I still like and oh man, it's so hard because like he says honor your father and mother, and it's hard for me too because I see my mom and I know what they go through now as an adult, like like what they've went through, kind of I've went through similar things, and um, I've learned from their failures in a sense. Um,
I've learned
some
they're
some
human too, right? Like before when
yes,
I was a
yes.
child, I didn't see that. Now I've forgiven my mother and I understand we have our differences. But I've forgiven her because I understand that she's human and she was only doing what she thought was right at the time, right?
Hmm. Yep, yep. and
Even
and,
if
that,
it
and that's
wasn't.
something. Yeah, exactly, because it's like and that's where we have to, and that's also another thing I think that children do. They know right and wrong. Like, they know when something's not right, but the adult is lying. The adult is manipulating or deceiving or, like
Hmm.
doing something they shouldn't be, and that's the thing. Our kids are going to grow up to know who we are,
Oh yeah.
so it's like, I mean, and that's really, really hard for me. Um, eh, Not in the fact that of who I am now, but it's who I was in certain times, and it's
I
also what
agree.
in the areas I failed now that I can't fix right now.
Yep.
Like it's maybe not my fault, or I can't be there. Um, luckily I'm there for one and almost two now that will be here soon. Um, but there's two children I have that, you know, I don't get to see as much. Like I barely get to see one, and the other one I don't get to see at all.
That's
So it's
awful.
yeah, it sucks, and I have to, I mean I think about them all the time. It's just I have my own issues and whatnot. It's hard for me to like reach out and talk, and um, we all have our own battles, and no one can be
Yeah,
perfect.
exactly. Like my children are
So
little still, so they're
mhm,
5 and 8. So I haven't had those problems yet. I mean, I don't know what the future foresees, but I try to be as honest with both of them as possible. Like with my daughter, I tell her as much as she can understand about what's going on with her father because I don't
mhm,
want her to think that I lied to her whole life, like you said, right? So,
yeah,
and she's super religious herself. Like her and her grandmother go to church all the time. They're greeters. Like she loves church, right? So like that makes
hmm,
me so happy, and I feel like that's gonna help her adjust to the negative things that do go on in her life with her father, right?
yeah, hmm, yep. And man, it's just uh, it we man, Jesus was right. I mean, about pretty much everything, but whenever he said that, you will experience brokenness on this earth, like broken bones, everything, and it's like, I mean, that's not a negative thing. That's not a bad thing. How we view it is
Mm-hmm.
how we see it, how we let it, what we let it do, how we let it shape us, the way we end up choosing to think and feel about it. So, like you said, gratitude, like what is there that I can look forward to? Like, how do I move forward in a better direction? How do I like do something with where I'm at? Like we need to start knocking on doors, not physically, but like,
Mm-hmm.
seeking some things out. Like we need to start actually like and persevering too. Like I'm gonna knock on this door until it opens. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna find the information I need. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it was like for me. I literally had to go to YouTube and I started studying neuroscience, psychology, relational attachment theory. Like,
I went to college just to understand my own self, like for psychology, because I didn't understand it. My parents didn't know how to tell me anything about that, right? So I went to college specifically for those things too. So I get exactly what you mean. It just so that I can understand myself and
yeah,
then find a way to make that better.
yeah. I get that. Sorry, my son came in here. It's
Sorry,
okay.
mine keeps opening the door. That's why I have the
Yeah.
background so that you can't see him if he
Hmm.
comes up.
Heck yeah. Okay. But yeah, and I mean, and we have to realize this too is this was something that was it's almost to where I started overthinking and like super like getting kind of I would say maybe negative in my thoughts. But I would overthink stuff so bad to like when I'm learning psychology, like almost second guessing myself. Um, to where I would be double minded in a sense. As I was learning to grow, but it's like we have to be okay with where we are overall. Like presently in the present. Like 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 our presence of who we are. And I'm not okay with who I am now, but I know who I am and who I'm becoming and who God says I am. Right. So it's like, even though I'm a workaholic, and I'm overperforming and burning out to try to understand the pain I'm going through, trying to
I've
find this
been there for
information. You know what I
that.
mean? Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like literally, like I'm talking about, like, even so,
That was
and
me
this is
last
another thing.
year.
Yep. And this is another thing too. I realized this when I studied the neuroscience behind it, and this one was crazy. It's deep too. It might be hard to even accept at first, but everyone's addicted because of our the chemicals in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we go through trauma, what happens in trauma? Like if I have a blunt force trauma, my body reacts to it. I get bruised up, my body starts trying to defend itself, heal itself, my immune system starts trying to happen. But what happens to our brain?
We have to
Like
find coping mechanisms.
yeah.
That's
Well,
because it loops in your head.
yeah, and neurons get disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So like people who suffer from PTSD,
I
right?
suffer from
Like
PTSD. So that's how I know all this.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also you have veterans too, like a different kind
Oh
of, right? Like just
yeah.
different kinds, like because I'm a veteran, but I didn't have that kind of PTSD in a sense. It's still all trauma related, but how does our brain, and I think they're still trying to understand it fully. But I mean, I feel like God has shown me some stuff, but dopamine helps rewire the brain. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of the chemicals that help in that. So that's why that people get
Addicted to
given
it.
Adderall. Yeah, they get addicted to that too, but that's why people get addicted to Adderall, which is the source of it too. But we also need it in order to rewire our brain. But that's where Dr. Caroline Leaf, I learned from her that our brain is neuroplastic. So our brain can rewire
Mm-hmm.
itself if we do certain things. And that's why we have to be wholly, not HOLY, but WHOLE. Like we have to be whole in that aspect of our habits, our daily routines, what we do. Like it's important to do these things because ice baths, right? Like that might sound completely crazy to people, but it's the blood flow in your body, like
Mm-hmm.
your heart rate. Like men have issues, because of their blood flow, and that's the whole point that our body needs certain things, and when we give it
Well,
fake fruit, so to speak, it doesn't work.
like I have to take SSRIs for my mental health issues. And
Mhm,
before that, I was extremely agoraphobic on top of the PTSD and the generalized anxiety and the skin picking. That's my
mhm,
diagnosis is. But
mhm,
before I was on the SSRIs, I wouldn't even leave the house, and I feel like it's like night and day, and I can like live life, and I'm not so consumed by my mental health issues, right? Plus,
mhm. Yeah.
obviously, like finding my own ways to heal, learning about that's like when I got in a car accident, but I was sober, but
Mhm,
it was just something that really set my mind into a place, like you said, where it's burnout, just learning and trying to figure out so much. And then that's when I got my assessment done and I worked with people to kind of find healthy coping mechanisms so that I don't
yes.
do anything I shouldn't do. And I also like I frail like I especially if I'm by myself, I'll get down on my knees like pretty much every day.
Dang. Yeah. So like, yeah, it man, it's so we can all relate in this way. We can all experience this stuff if we're compassionate, empathetic, and we listen with love to understand. And man, so I'm all over the place, I would say, when it comes to like just absorbing things to try to be a better person overall. But I
Journey.
watch anime. What was that?
Is it it's a journey, right? Like our whole
Yeah,
lives are
yeah.
a journey. So
Well, so like I've watched anime, but I've also studied all these different things from these people who have done it for 30, 40 years to try to verify and back certain things and validate stuff, but also to find the real information for what growth, truth, and love actually looks like. And,
hmm
and then I use faith as my foundational belief, so it's crazy how the Holy Spirit has led me to truths and love and deeper parts of it, like deeper things that I was actually seeking out and looking for. Um, because it's the abuse of power and the abuse of authority, one of those things that really kind of makes it hard to trust, makes us, be so put off by certain things and people, which creates biases, cognitive biases, the negative and the positive biases, or justification, and all these things.
justification. I love that one because we do that far too much. We don't even realize we're doing it.
Yes. Yeah, and we're blind to it because it's in our subconscious, right? And it's like, whoa, okay. But what's crazy is like, and that was one thing that for me was like, am I justifying? Am I trying to justify this?
That was
I
my
was like,
problem.
how do I realize? How do I realize I'm not justifying this? Because I had someone ask me that as an atheist, and they were an atheist, and basically I was like, I know it's the truth, I know it's real, and I know it's love when it brings me to the end of myself, and I have to deny myself for that to be true, and I have to accept that over what I think and what I claim to be real. Because once again, let God be true and every man a liar. Because the Holy Spirit is the one that works through us to bring out the
Hmm.
truth. And we have to kind of decipher and what's the word? It starts with a D. Discern, discern that.
Well, I actually learned that from I was dating a veteran actually at the time, and he told me you always justify your actions. You're always justifying your actions because he's a very blunt person, right? So always you're justifying. That's where I really started to cognitively realize that I actually was justifying all of these
Hmm.
actions instead of taking accountability for them, and that was
Yes.
what was keeping me in a negative headspace because very easy to justify, oh well, somebody said this to me, so I'm gonna behave this way or whatever you want to say. But if you take accountability instead of justifying it and see where you were wrong or what you did that wasn't necessarily, you know what I mean? Like you take accountability for
Yes.
your actions, you clean your side of the street. If somebody else did something to you in the situation, you clean up your side of the street. Don't justify and blame them for everything. Don't be victim. Take accountability, right? And that's what I live by
Yes.
because that's the only way I can, right?
Hmm. Yep. And man, it's just so, and I love coming to these new realizations because it gets rid of entitlement. It gets rid of the fake. It gets rid of the things that are false, that are deceiving. And I love really getting down to the absolute bare truth of things. And I know that there's less people probably there than there is believing comfortable lies. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm getting closer to my father. You know what I mean? I'm getting closer to what really matters.
And you only have
You know,
one life, so
exactly.
that's it, right?
Yeah.
It's
You know,
you
and
being able to understand you and love you and do what you think is best for yourself, right?
mm, yep, yep. But it doesn't give me an excuse not to love people still.
No,
So
no, no.
yeah. Well, because well, and I say it that way because and not that you were saying wrong or different than what I was saying or that, but um, man, my dad, he was divorced 3 times, and I
Oh,
said I
that must have
never
been a
want.
roller coaster.
Oh yeah. So it's been a crazy life, so to speak. My mom was the second divorce, but then he had a third one and whatnot. But as far as like how it all affected me and everything, I was like, man, I never want that to happen. But then I realized, I eventually had 3 kids by 3 different baby mamas, and I was like, hey, man, I did almost the same exact thing,
I said
just in
that
a
to
different way.
myself too.
Yep.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna only have one parent for
Mm-hmm.
my children. Nope, I got
Yep.
two. And it's like
Yep.
God's little like you were being
Uh-huh.
judgmental of other people that were like that, and I was judgmental
Mm-hmm.
beforehand, and that was God's way of showing me, you were judgmental, so you know
Mm-hmm.
what? Now I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Yep. Well, I was even legalistic to the extent of my view of divorce because, yes, Moses gave us a law or a commandment and stuff like that, saying that it was permissible to get divorced if there was immorality and stuff like that. But that's not what God actually wants to happen. Um, but also at the same time, He's not going to condemn us if we do get divorced. It's, he's not, it's like not like an instant one way ticket to hell, like
Yeah.
it's so it was the fact that like I have to realize that just because I'm facing abuse or just because I'm giving abuse, or even if I'm the one doing it, and I don't realize it, something like how do I fix this, but also how do I create a boundary? I need those tools. I need tools to start living a
Mhm.
better, healthy life. It doesn't give me an excuse to run away from my problems, but how can God help me and also work miraculously to heal and fix my problems? Because God's power is perfect in my weakness.
Mm.
So if I am too busy fighting these issues, why is there an issue to begin with?
That's the
Because we
whole. point of it, right?
Yeah, we all want love and we all want to be seen, heard, acknowledged, and we all have a little kid inside of us. So it's my little kid versus her little kid, or
Hmm.
it's my dad's little kid versus my mom's little kid. And it, man, it chokes me up even thinking about it. But you know the pain that mom as a child had to go through. And I don't blame her. I
That's how
don't
I
blame
feel
my
with my
parents.
mom. She had a
You know what I
lot of,
mean?
yeah, my mom was told that her mother killed herself in a mental hospital. And then when I was 14, these people showed up saying that no, these were her younger siblings and that my grandmother never did die. And my mom just like, so yeah. And I like
Yeah.
feel for her. I know that like kills her inside because she thought her mother
Hmm.
was dead. She found out she wasn't. My grandpa lied to her whole life. And now she
Hmm.
has these siblings and she doesn't know how to deal with that either. And so I know that her navigating that while parenting me, it wasn't easy. So I get what you mean. And like my
Yeah.
husband's mother had a really rough childhood too. So um
Hmm.
I understand exactly the pain and you just want to like hug them and you like, I do understand you, and I do forgive you. Just it's okay.
And that's why I watch anime, because there's two animes that really have like honestly given me hope, strength, and like perseverance and endurance and all these things. My Hero Academia and Naruto Shippuden. Um, but you know, the storylines, the arc, and like there's just a couple specific scenes that really just, man, like every time, even just thinking about it, it stirs it up in me. Um, and see, here's the thing: even when we cry, and this is another thing that helped me as a man realize that it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's fine. We all do it. It helps other people, honestly. But in our tear ducts, we release cortisol, which is the stress chemical. So it's good to cry. That's why sometimes you feel better after you cry
Mm-hmm.
because you're releasing stress from your body. You know, sometimes whenever we dance, you know, like even they say a shimmy a day keeps the stress away, you know, like so, you know, it's funny things, but you
Well,
know,
that's why when you were saying about the music, right? Like, I will
yeah.
definitely do that with music. If I need to have a good cry, I will listen to music that's
Mhm.
suppressing just so that I can get it out. Or my dad's song that me and him had, right? We had that song,
Mhm.
How Do I Live Without You? And that's literally our song, and I have to live
Mm,
without him. So, the
yeah.
tears. But
Hmm.
and
And it's like,
Father's Day is coming up, so that's not going to be a fun day
yeah.
for me either. But
Yeah.
that's like everybody who's lost their mother on this day, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
I
And I'll
I
like listen to,
know.
yeah. And I'll listen to love songs too and stuff like that to really kind of like just worship God in a sense and whatnot. Like as a covenant, basically, you know, what I mean? Like when you're in covenant with things, you're in union, right? So it's like God, your wife, and you, and your husband, you know, and like y'all being together. But you know, it's genuine, it's raw, it's authentic, it's intimacy. You know, intimacy isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional, spiritual. Because intimacy, man, I heard this and I love it every time. Intimacy is seeing into me.
I like that too.
Like
That's perfect.
yes, because of the fact that what's not intimacy? Disconnection. And disconnection is I'm not going to let you see. You can't see me. I'm scared. It's what Adam did. I'm scared. I'm afraid. I'm going to put on clothes. I'm going to hide.
Hmm.
But and we don't even know the parts of ourselves that hide sometimes because it's a little kid in ourselves that's in the shadows or scared of who we are as an adult now.
Yeah, and like that's why like my husband and I work so well because he cares and he listens and he understands and we have like a true
Yeah.
intimacy and connection in that way where we can just sit and talk and
Hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
just about certain things or whatever. And my past relationships, people were always like telling me what to do and who to be, and he doesn't do that. He just supports
Hmm.
me in whatever I want to do because
Yeah.
that's what a real partner should do, right? Where like a
Yes.
lot of my relationships in the past, it was definitely you can't do this or you can't wear that or you can't say this or you can't be that. Like it was
Hmm.
always something, right? And I could never be myself. And so
Yeah. And
I
it's
was
hard.
doing, yeah, it's hard because then I would like when I was away from them and I was at work or something, then I could be myself. And then I kind of felt like a liar because I would tell them that, like, oh no, I'm being like proper in your eyes, but
Hmm.
improper at work. Like, I don't know. I felt negative. I hated it, right?
Yeah. Like you had to put on a mask, you know,
Well, I used to be
like some,
like dying to go to work on Monday because I'm like, oh, I could be myself.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so that's just, that kind of boils it down. I mean, there's so much more to the story. Uh, but like, I just, it's where I'm at right now in the journey, in the process, and that's also what marriages are. It's what the deep, most intimate relationships are as a process. It's a journey. There's, you know, exactly speaking. I mean, how do couples be married 50, 60, 70 years, or whatever? It's like a lot of forgiveness, a lot of
Yeah,
grace,
my
uh, you
grandparents.
know, yeah, true leadership, true love, true, friendship, true all of it. Like,
Sticking by each other in the hard times because people always are too easy to leave when something gets tough in life, right?
yeah. Hmm.
And like right now, like my husband and I are going through a bit of some tough stuff, right? And a lot of people be like, a lot of people would normally tell you to leave in that situation, but I don't like,
Hmm.
no, he supported me through my negative things. Why would I do
Hmm.
that? That's not fair. And that's not
Yes.
this world's too easy to give up. And I don't believe in
Yeah.
that. I believe, obviously, if a relationship is toxic and not working, yes, but
Hmm.
just not supporting somebody and giving up on them, I think, isn't, it's working together makes it last, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I've been the bad guy in my relationship, a lot.
Oh, so
You
have
know what I
I, because
mean?
I was an addict.
Yeah. Well, I was too. Uh, mine was SA. So Sexaholics Anonymous, and then Workaholics as well. So that's how my dad was. But the other one was basically my mom never validated me or whatnot. I at least is what I how I received it as a kid. And so I seeked approval and validation from women, and it was just all throughout high school. It was
I did that
I had
too.
a yeah. So it was bad. I was very promiscuous, I guess if you want to say it. I don't know if that's the right
Mhm.
word for a man, but
I was
I was.
too at one point in my life, so I'm not gonna lie, right? And it was for the
Mhm.
same reason. I just wanted validation or
Yep.
just yeah, basically validation.
Yeah. See, it's a need. It's a need being unmet.
You're just going
It's
about it
exactly
and
what it is.
you don't know the
Yeah.
coping mechanisms or and you're just going about it in the wrong way,
Hmm.
Also, just because you're in that state of mind, sometimes it's hard to break free from that, right?
Hmm.
Especially because
Yep.
I was always the small girl. I always looked younger for my age, so boys never liked me until I was like 25, right? So
Hmm.
once I hit 25 and I started to look like an adult, all of a sudden I got all attention. And I was like, whoa, I like this because I never received it
Yeah.
from men or my mom. My dad
Hmm.
was always at work, so it was, yeah, same
Yeah.
thing.
It, yep. And that even portrays into our inner critic, right? The inner voices that we hear, there's different name brands for them and stuff like that. And because I go through therapy as well, it's like, I've been through therapy a long time now. And uh I finally had to be able to put a label on it, or could label it, and I was an invisible hero. I was never seen, but I always had to be the fixer. I always had to be the one that would go by. And I was parentified. I faced parentification to where I was the emotional healers of my parents, the ones that they relied on, the one that knew everything that I shouldn't know as a kid, and, had to be the one that they leaned on in that situation. So I was like, man. And that's just like one of many, right? Like
Yeah.
many things. And then it's like, what are you talking about? You had a great childhood. Or what are
Behind
you talking
closed
about childhood trauma?
doors.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. It's like, so yeah, and but that's what I'm saying. We can all relate. And this is why I even talk to atheists. It's like your beliefs and my beliefs. I'm not going to condemn you for whatever they may be because you're a human, I'm a human. I believe we're all made in God's image, but I believe you also want to be seen, heard, valued, loved, and appreciated because those are needs we need. If we all need the same things and we're not getting it the same way, or if we don't do these things, it produces signs, symptoms, and basically different character traits of the same thing. I mean, to me, it just seems like um, we're choosing our own medicine belief.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But one is good, one's bad.
I totally agree. But I gotta put
Yeah.
my kids to bed, so I'm gonna let you go. I'm so sorry. I just looked at
Oh,
the
you're good.
time. I'm
You're
like,
good. I
oh,
understand.
um,
Yeah, no, I was like, I didn't know.
do you have one last thing you want to say to everybody? Because I think I'm gonna do a part two with you because we didn't really
Yeah,
get the
I'd
full
love it.
talk. So
Heck
yeah,
yeah,
I think
I'd
we're
love it.
gonna do a part two. I'm gonna send you my link and we're gonna do a part two because I don't feel like we're finished the conversation. I just know I gotta put
Yeah.
them to bed.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I got you. So I guess last thing would be an encouraging word for people. Just, perseverance is, oh man, I had it real quick. Dang, perseverance, endurance, and resilience. So perseverance is mental, endurance is physical, and resilience is emotional. If you have those three things, you can be consistent and you can keep going and just keep your focus on what actually matters because that's what makes you who you are. Like who you believe you are, but don't let limiting beliefs, lies tell you otherwise. So use the knowledge of God to tear down strongholds, which are limiting beliefs in your life. You know, um, and just know that it's a process. Be okay with where you are and that God calls you to have dominion and multiply and that you will stomp your heel on the serpent's head.
100%. I love it. But thank you for coming on. We're definitely doing a part two. So yeah, I'm not gonna say goodbye. I'm just gonna say see you in a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Thank you
I
so
will
much.
see you. Thank you.